Any way you look at it, little by little by little by little, they are chipping away at the dollar hegemony. They are chipping away at the dollar supremacy, and they're using commodities and mostly energy outside of gold and silver to facilitate that, whether it be the countries they're admitting to their group, or the trades that they're doing within this group, or their acquisition of hard assets at the same time they are shedding treasuries and dollars.
Wednesday, November 8th, 2023, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today, I have a popular guest on. He hasn't been on in a while, but it's Andy Schectman. He's the co-founder, president, and owner of Miles Franklin, a precious metals investment company. Andy, welcome back to the channel. How are you?
Mario, it's so wonderful to see you, buddy. I watch you every day, but it's nice to talk to you, and great to be back. Thanks for inviting me, and always good to see you.
You're welcome. So could we start, Andy? We were speaking before we came on, and looking at silver a little bit, and the fact that we're still here around 23 or even below 23. And I saw some tweets, I think earlier last week or earlier this week, about the price of Big Macs prior to 2020, a Big Mac meal, and now the price for it, after COVID and in 2023. And I thought to myself, how can that be possible that the Big Mac meal is so expensive and silver still half the price that it was in 1980? So maybe we can start with that.
I mean, just about everything is up in price. In fact, I think if you look at the difference in the price of or the amount of money that it takes to buy a home versus today versus 2020, the numbers are up considerably. You had to have a $60,000 a year salary in order to buy a home in 2020, and now it's up over 115,000. You're talking about everything going up, including the cost of money. And when you talk about inflation, that the numbers that are being given to us exclude things like food and energy and housing. So the cost of a Big Mac is up commensurate with the amount of money creation and the level of inflation. Yet, in fact, it's up much more when you compare it to the statistics that tell us that inflation is cooled down a bit and is running at 3%, when we know that that's not true. It's much, much higher. And when we look at silver has been held back for so long, Mario. And I read a very interesting report, and John Little from the Pickaxe wrote a very interesting report, and I know he had mentioned some of it to you as well. And I got to tell you, it resonates with me quite a bit. Now, I haven't done the deep dive into it, but suffice it to say, it's quite compelling when he talks about the fact that the military-industrial complex has had to hold down the price of silver for a very long time in order to use it to build its munitions and its high-tech weaponry. Anything from aerospace to missiles and anything in between uses copious amounts of silver. And in a machine supposedly that is directing wars and funding wars, both sides of wars, or weaponizing both sides of the wars. And you see missiles being fired around the country, around the world at a level that is shocking. Well, silver is an integral component to all of this weaponry. And the companies that need to make these weapons need silver. That's the bottom line. A very interesting, compelling article. I suggest everyone check it out, the Pickaxe. And it's substantiated with a tremendous amount of fact. And there is always a little bit of connecting the dots left for the reader to do, but it's compelling. And when you look at an asset that is under half of its 1980 peak, something's awry here. For 40 years, you're talking about the cost of everything is much, much higher. I don't know any commodity that is under half of its 1980 peak, with the exception of silver. You look at the amount of shorting on the COMEX by the large banks in silver. There's something awry with the price of silver, as the prices of everything that we need are escalating around us. to the point where, you know, you got the United Nations coming out and saying if the bankers don't, you know, reevaluate their 2% inflation threshold, they're going to break the entire system. You're going to see those numbers creep higher and higher and higher. And the bottom line is, in an economy where in the month of October, the United States government produced or printed $500 billion. It took 209 years for the country, or near that amount anyway, to print that kind of money at the onset of this country, or in the history of this country. We do it in a span of just a few weeks in the month of October. So yeah, and when you see now interest payments running at $1 trillion a year, this is something that is real. So, you know, for people to be surprised about how much a Big Mac is costing or the level of inflation, well, that's not surprising to me. But what is surprising is their ability to hold down the price of silver when everything else around us has been inflated to levels that you know, are much higher than what we saw just a couple of short years ago.
Andy, before we continue, could you tell the viewers about this week's special at Myers Franklin and how they can get a hold of you?
Certainly. So, you know, we've been trying to bring gold, silver, and platinum each week as a special, and anyways, for as long as we can. And I guess you could say this week's special is kind of like focused upon bartering or trading or utility or versatility, which is always important to have in your metals portfolio. So we're doing something a little bit different this time. We have all three: gold, silver, and platinum, kind of with the same theme. And in terms of gold, we have the Swiss Valcambi 2.5-gram gold bar at $25 over melt value. And from a standpoint of trading, you know, you're talking 0.08037 of an ounce. It's a very small bar. 2.5 grams gives you great utility, great versatility, and only $25 over melt value. When you compare it to other forms of barterable gold or silver, the premiums on these are actually fairly low. We also have the platinum 5-gram. Oh, well, we'll start there. We got the silver 2023 Australian Kangaroo. From a standpoint of value and price on a sovereign mint coin, over the last 3 years, these sovereign coins have been outrageously expensive, and they have come down actually to a level that has me baffled why they are so affordable, why there is such good availability. I guess we'll have to see how that all plays out. But right now at 310 over spot, you're almost $3-4 cheaper than we saw them for the better part of the last 4 years. They're the purest silver coin in the world, along with the maple leaf at 4 nines fine. And they come in the mini mint boxes. You can see there of 10 tubes per box or 250 coins per box, whereas just about every other sovereign mint coin comes in boxes of 500. And with the laws being passed right now around the United States, where these states, over, I don't know, 15 plus states, have passed laws that are allowing legal tender gold and silver coins like the Kangaroo to be used for currency purposes for all debts, public and private, even as far as paying your property tax. This is a good one, a really good one, where, you know, the premiums are as low as we've seen them in almost 4 years. Highly respected coin, and the most pure silver 1 ounce coin in the world. So love those at 310 over. And lastly, for platinum, we have the 5-gram Pamp Swiss, like the Valcambi, both Swiss bars. Pamp is probably the most respected, the oldest of the Swiss refineries, and 5-gram platinum bar also at $25 over melt value. So you have, you know, very small items here that give you great utility. They can certainly reach us at info@milesfranklin.com for a more competitive price sheet than you'll find on our website. We only allow purchasing up to $10,000 on the website. The email that you would send to us saying Mario or Mineko64 sent us, you can ask for any questions you have, but you can also ask for the price sheet, which you'll find will be very competitive as anyone in the country. And we're certainly Always eager to answer any questions that your listeners have. And please feel free to ask anything from IRAs to anything in between, price of metal, just want to see the price sheet, or even things as far as questions regarding macroeconomics, geopolitical events, you name it. That's what we're here for. And all of our brokers have a very rich and diverse background, many of which have spent time on Wall Street. A couple of them have master's degree in business administration, degrees from Wharton School of Business. I'd like to believe that in terms of a hybrid model where we're not just an online presence, but we're also a brokerage model, relationship model, our brokers are as qualified and prepared to answer challenging questions and give real answers, as much so as anyone in the industry. So anyways, that's what we have on special today. But honestly, Mario, just about everything is on special when you look at it from a standpoint of availability and price in relation to where things have been the last few years. And in a world, to me, that seems to be spinning much faster out of control than what we've seen over the last few years, it just doesn't make much sense to me. So that's what we got going on this week. And I'd love to talk with your listeners. So please feel free to send us an email or to reach out to us directly.
Thank you, Andy. That's great. Yeah, and you mentioned John Little, and I got in contact with him. I've had him on before, and we're going to speak about this topic next week. So for the viewers, I think that should be an interesting interview about silver. It's almost like they're trying to keep you from looking at silver because it's so important, like a head fake. And
that's exactly what it is. And look, I don't think there's any coincidence to that. And they try and tell us that the amount of silver that is being used in green and digital applications, even photography, are vastly overstated in a respect of trying to understate the amount that is needed for military to kind of throw them off the scent. But if you think about it, the military industrial complex, if you think about it, really is at the center of all of these wars. And if they're going to be providing munitions to both sides, providing munitions, restockpiling ours, and fighting these wars all over the world, well, you need silver. So if you're going to need silver and don't want it to be gobbled up in the face of much rising prices and strong fundamentals, well, you have to kill the canary. And that's the whole premise of his article. It's quite compelling. It's quite interesting. I think your people will like it a lot.
Yeah, and talking about geopolitics and how strategic silver is, we've recently seen, and I'm going to share here with you, I don't know if you follow him, is a guy on X or Twitter, a Chinese guy, and he keeps track of the Shanghai Gold Exchange prices. And I think it was back in September, there was a huge premium. I think gold at the time was like 18 something, and in dollar terms in Shanghai, it was trading almost around 2,000. And lo and behold, gold in the West caught up. And now we see here that it's trading, I think from this morning, it was at 2016, even though we're at 1960 something. And even silver is trading like at 24.58 equivalent, which is almost like $2 higher. And this guy, Bai Xiaojun, or Oriental Ghost, he sent me some of the research he's done over the last few years. And he talks about how silver is so important for China, also industrially, for the new economy, for the green economy that they have, and probably as well for their military. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about also if you think that's related to the fact that the big Chinese banks have left the LBMA. Do you think there's something related to that? And there's a battle here between West and East, and whether the physical market, the price is being made now in Shanghai?
It's something I've believed for a very long time. I think it's the ultimate ace up their sleeve. First of all, China's purchased gold now for over 11 straight months. And even though the numbers that they tell us we all believe are way off from what they actually have. Alistair McLeod was saying that he thought that they had somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 metric tons, which would be 5 times what the West has. He says 18,000 tons owned by the people and 20 by the state. They tell us that their numbers are 2,192 tons, and even by the most mainstream pundits, they would say that that's vastly under counted or understated. And that article that you have right there is talking about the fact that they bought 593 tons, which is 80% more than what they bought the first 3 quarters of last year. They are in a hurry, as the title says, to buy enormous amounts of gold. There's no question about that. But what better way to do it than playing the arbitrage game, where they will, and I don't care what some of these analysts will tell you is the reason that the price is higher, whether it be currency controls or whatever it may be. I don't believe it. I think what they're doing is slowly turning up the heat to arbitrage as much of the gold and silver across the pond as they possibly can. And at the same time, you look at this, their treasury holdings are down to a 14-year low. So they're shedding treasuries. They're gobbling up anything that's not nailed down. And in order to unnail the things that are nailed down, they're turning up the heat on what they will actually pay for an ounce of gold or for an ounce of silver, which is arbitraging a large amount, where traders will arbitrage for just a few cents a share, let alone $2 an ounce of silver or almost $100 an ounce of gold. And you look at their counterpart, Russia, they've increased their gold reserves again this year, and to the largest in Russian modern history. So, these countries, these BRICS nations that are standing up to the Western hegemony, that are doing things in a methodical, plotting fashion. A lot of people were bummed out that they didn't issue the gold-backed currency in August. Well, who cares? They're trading in local currencies. You can see that. All of these countries are trading in local currencies right now, before they come back, as they were tasked to come back at the end of next year or at the meeting in Russia, to find to show what they've found or their discovery in terms of figuring out a way to issue a common commodity-backed settlement currency. That's coming. That's in the cards. But in the meantime, you have countries like Qatar, who just signed its second 27-year natural gas deal with the Chinese energy company Sinopec. You have the first ever cross-border payment that was done, or transaction that was done on one of the Chinese energy exchanges, cross-border. They didn't tell us who they did it with, but they actually bought, I believe it was natural gas, with the digital yuan. So you're seeing all of these countries that are striking deals with one another in local currency like yuan, or look at Brazil and China now buying corn and soybeans from Brazil and paying for it either in real or in yuan. All of these deals that are being made with these countries are being done so in their local currencies. And it will come to a point where I believe they will use a gold-backed common settlement currency. But until then, these countries are loading up on the commodities methodically. They're doing it the right way, slowly. They're not transparent upon how much they're accumulating it. And when you mentioned they left the LBMA, well, why would they want to be there? That's where it's all recorded. Why not just buy gold from other countries that aren't part of the LBMA and massively blow up your stockpiles without anyone really knowing? And these are all ominous signs. I call it logarithmic decay. Little by little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once. I mean, how much do you have to see around you, whether it be deals in local currencies, whether it be backing away from the LBMA, whether it be raising the prices or massively accumulating? I mean, raising the prices higher than the London benchmark or the COMEX benchmark. Any way you look at it, little by little by little by little, they are chipping away at the dollar hegemony. They are chipping away at the dollar supremacy, and they're using commodities and mostly energy outside of gold and silver to facilitate that, whether it be the countries they're admitting to their group, or the trades that they're doing within this group, or their acquisition of hard assets. At the same time, they are shedding treasuries and dollars, little by little by little, methodically. The problem most people have in the West is that they're addicted to instant gratification not being fast enough. Now look at cryptocurrencies. Bang, you got to make all this money. You know, it doesn't work that way. And these countries understand it. They're setting their chessboard up the right way rather than shotgunning it. They're doing it to where it'll be difficult to challenge if done properly. And I think that's the road that we are heading on. And you can see it if you look closely at all of these developments that continue to happen in all of these different areas.
Yes, and a few years ago, I think 2.5 years ago, Putin said that the dollar system and the Western financial system was based on mythical values. And in a sense, he was right, because we have so much leverage. And so how long do you think COMEX and the LBMA can keep control of these huge short positions, leverage short positions that really inundate the market and cap the physical price? Because I think the Shanghai exchange and other non-Western exchanges, they're looking at gold and silver or commodities exchange more as a fair way to exchange value, not to speculate. You know, there's always a need for speculators to provide liquidity, but I think the COMEX and the LBMA, they've become like bucket shops, which means that you're just betting on the price and there's no connection to the real commodity. How long do you think they can keep this going for? I know it's a tricky question.
It is a tricky question, but I think ultimately, once they've siphoned all the metal eastward, you will see whether it be an exchange in Abu Dhabi or the Shanghai Metals Exchange or the Moscow Metals Exchange will take over for the fractionalized and I guess you could say more or less illegitimate in terms of its. You could say the Western systems are the Western price setting system of COMEX and the LBMA are a scam in the respect it's the futures controlling the price rather than the underlying commodity. And the difference is that the West doesn't look at holding gold and silver quite the way the rest of the world does. If you look at a comment by the head of the Polish National Bank, his name is Adam Glapiński. He says, holding gold was a matter of financial security and stability. Gold will retain its value even when someone cuts off the power to the global financial system, destroying traditional assets based on electric accounting records. So this is the head of the National Bank of Poland saying this. And, you know, when you, and they continue to buy, they've continued to buy, they repatriated their gold from the New York Fed in 2017, 2018. So these countries see what's happening. They understand that, you know, the reason they're not bitching, the reason that they're not yelling and screaming about the rehypothecated COMEX and the LBMA is that it has allowed them to reposition, that has allowed them to de-dollarize, using the suppression of the Western markets against us. Fine, you want to suppress the price? Fine, we'll stand for delivery. Thank you very much. And we're seeing it in every single way. It's not just the COMEX and the LBMA, which at some point will lose all credibility. We're seeing things drained out of the Shanghai Gold Exchange. We're seeing things drained out of the ETFs. And we just saw BlackRock take almost, I don't remember, it was a copious amount of gold out of PSLV just the other day, almost 8 million ounces they took out of silver, rather, from PSLV. They're draining the ETFs. And so I guess it continues to exist until there are no more metals to be delivered. And when that happens, everything radically shifts from west to east. And I think that includes the price setting mechanism, which I can't believe will, you know, you look at the Chinese leaving the LBMA, I mean, maybe that's just step number one. But I think when you see a system that is rehypothecated to the point where, if you look at the registered category in silver right now, it's 1,700% rehypothecated. 1,700%. I mean, at some point, this becomes a speculative casino and has lost its bearings, if you will, in terms of what it was founded for, to offset risk. And instead, it's turned into a casino that allows the big banks to control the price and to create a perception of reality that is very destructive overall. And so I think they're just using that suppression against us. And when you see the Shanghai Metals Exchange push the price of gold up almost $100 or silver almost $2 above the Western benchmark, that is the beginning of the end. If you don't see that, you're not paying close enough attention. It's called arbitrage. Let's lift the price up little by little, high enough so that we siphon off all the metal that's not nailed down. This stuff's never coming back. This is a one-way ticket. So yeah, it will end when there are no more deliveries to be made at these make-believe fractional prices. And when that happens, you'll see, I believe, the East take over in terms of setting the price globally.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that our leaders in the West don't see how important gold is. Granted, supposedly we have a lot of gold reserves, like in the US, 8,000 tons, in the EU as well. The UK, of course, is an exception because we only have like just over 300 metric tons, which is now less than Poland. Poland has now got 340 tons. They've increased their holdings by 111 tons. But what I wanted to talk about now,
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't string up Gordon Brown over that, Mario.
yeah,
I really
yeah, they still listen to Gordon Brown here, unfortunately. Yeah, that's the thing. People, a lot of people realize that he made a mistake there, but it was apparently diversifying into the euro. But there are other stories about that he was actually trying to help some bullion banks, and he pre-announced the sale, and it drove the price down.
he
Before,
sold it, he bottom ticked it at like $250 an ounce,
yeah,
sold all the reserves. I mean, come on, that just can't be coincidental, can it?
no. So to I wanted to look at the BRICS because the last time we spoke, they hadn't had their summit in South Africa, and we found out in the summit that they've invited, I think it was 6 or 7 new countries. I think it's 6. They're going to be 11 as of the 1st of January. And I found that at first I just thought, oh yeah, a lot of them produce oil, and that. But if you look at them on the map, on the atlas, and very few people unfortunately know where anything is these days. But you look at Egypt, which was invited, they hold the Suez Canal. You look at Ethiopia, they're there near the straits there in the
Hormuz.
or no, Southwest Asia, like Djibouti. They're near Djibouti there, the entrance to the Red Sea. And then you have Iran, which is Strait of Hormuz, United Arab Emirates around that area, all those countries
You
there.
also have Argentina with the Straits of Magellan, and
Oh
also
yeah,
the
yeah,
largest natural gas holdings in all of
yeah,
South America.
Argentina, yeah. So I think that was a real big like a shot across the bow of especially the United States, but also the West. And just wanted to ask your opinion on that. And is it surprising then that we now have like a conflict in that part of the world? And I actually think a lot of those countries over there don't want this conflict to spread because I'm not sure how well they would do against the West. And it seems like the West is trying to push them into it. And it seems to me that it's connected to BRICS 11.
Yeah, I mean, you have with the new BRICS 6, you have Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates being massive oil producers. You throw that in with Russia, you have the majority of all the OPEC oil. Of course, we said Argentina, a major agricultural producer, also controls the Straits of Magellan and has the largest natural gas deposit in all of South America. You have Egypt, and look, they control, as you mentioned, the Suez Canal, a massive major shipping route. And then Ethiopia, the home to the fastest growing economy in Africa. And, with this initial expansion, you're talking, almost 50% of the world's population. And that doesn't even include the Belt Road Initiative, which is up to 75%. You have 25% of all the world's exported goods are represented in these countries. You have a lot of the rare earth metals, manganese, graphite, nickel, all of these, 75% of the world's manganese, 50% of the world's graphite, 30% of the world's nickel, 10% of the global copper, you have 23 countries that have formally submitted their application to join the BRICS, Mario, and another 22 have expressed interest. You have a massive influence or control over OPEC, and these 11 countries will also, more or less rule OPEC in the distribution of oil. You have the two largest natural gas producers worldwide are joint members of BRICS with Russia and Iran. You have the fact that the U.S. has lost its Saudi oil peg as a result of all of this, these deals that are being struck. Look, you have the majority of the world's commodities are now under the BRICS sphere of influence, including most of the rare earth metals found in the Eurasian continent. And then you have China being the world's factory to put everything together. And I think, you will see these countries trading in local currencies, as we've seen Brazil and China and Russia and India and Russia and China and on and on and on and on. But there will come a point where I believe that they will issue a common trading currency at some point. We're not there yet, but they will. And that's when things get very interesting. And let's not forget, there's two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world in the BRICS countries. And now you have, as I've been saying for 2 years, 3 years, you have the president of Belarus saying we need to merge the SCO and the Eurasian Economic Union. That's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which Iran has already joined and Saudi Arabia has applied. It's the largest regional financial and military organization on the planet, along with the Eurasian Economic Union. These are all these ex-Soviet countries that end in Stan. These are all going to join together. All of these countries are going to join with the BRICS and the Belt Road. You're talking 90% of human population when you put all these countries together, and it's little by little by little by little, and then all at once. The infrastructure is being put in place, and in order for them to issue a common backed currency, you have to have a large enough sphere of influence. Well, you got 11, and now 27 have formally applied, 22 have expressed interest. And one of the things that I don't know that you and I have talked enough about real quick is that if you wanted to lose the world reserve status for the US dollar, the first thing that you would do would be to weaponize it, make everyone think, hey, we're next. And the second thing you would do is tell Saudi Arabia, listen, fellas, we're going green. Thanks for 50 years, but we're going green. And we signed an executive order to that extent. And when you look at who the lead economic advisor is to the Biden administration, it's a man named Jared Bernstein, whose whole thesis is to lose the world reserve status. He's written reports on it called Dethrone King Dollar. When Trump slapped tariffs on China, he said, great, maybe we'll lose the reserve status now. That was picked up in the Washington Post. New York Times ran the article, Dethrone King Dollar. You couldn't draw it up any better. And I think exactly what you are seeing is this coalition of countries doing it the right way, little by little by little. It's logarithmic decay. That is the future of the dollar. Little by little by little, it will be chipped away at its hegemony until bang, we wake up one morning and all of these countries, which represent the majority of human population who are not going green, will say, hey, we've now decided we're not going to buy oil or sell oil for dollars. It's going to be something else because you guys are going green anyway. And I think we are getting to that point. What's happening in the Middle East, I think, will greatly accelerate this. And, everyone talks about an oil embargo type of deal where these countries who are not aligned ideologically with the West will issue some sort of an oil embargo. How about they just stop taking dollars for oil? That nuclear moment, that great reset moment where everyone who's had to accumulate dollars for 50 years dumps them because they don't need to hold them anymore to buy oil. We had to for 50 years, but not anymore. That synthetic demand ends all at once and creates a religious experience in the West as all of the dollars get dumped globally in favor of something else, creating a tsunami of ultimately hyperinflation that hits the shores of the West. The byproduct of that is interest rates that go parabolic. I think you see that. Don't know when, don't know what triggers it, but if I had to guess, the divergence in ideology for sure with what's happening in the West will, if nothing else, accelerate it, in my opinion.
I agree about the interest rates. And I think to some extent what we've seen in the last 2 years is part of this de-dollarization, the fact that everyone's so shocked that, the 10-year got up to 5. But people are starting to wake up. people like Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink, they're talking about 5.5% and even 7% interest rates. I just wanted to show the viewers here the strategic importance of Egypt. Of course, they got the Suez Canal, and you've got a lot of oil that flows from Iraq, Iran, and maybe even Syria. It goes into Kuwait, and it flows out of the Persian Gulf here. That's the Strait of Hormuz. So if you got United Arab Emirates, I think is Bahrain or Qatar, have they been accepted as well? But
No, not yet. Not
but
yet.
United Arab Emirates, they're right
have.
here. You got Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and then you've got Ethiopia here, which is very close to Djibouti, and you have this opening here to the Red Sea, and then the Suez Canal is such an important place. And then you mentioned Argentina, and the other thing as well, you've got South Africa, which is this route before the Suez Canal. I think the British used to go to India via the Cape. So let's look at Argentina as well. And I think it's good to do this because a lot of people sometimes don't realize these things. So this is what Andy meant here by the Straits of Magellan here. If something happens to the Panama Canal, you'd have to go up through here to go to the West Coast instead of going.
One thing I'd like to mention, you triggered my memory when you mentioned Iraq. Iraq. Look, Iraq was invaded 20 years ago by the West in 2003. They would tell you it was illegally, as we did so in searching for weapons of mass destruction. We didn't find any. We destroyed their country and toppled the regime. We're sorry. Sorry about that. The world looks at us as being hypocritical. Look at what they've done. They're holding all of their oil revenues at the New York Federal Reserve. And last year in 2022, they made $90 billion in oil revenues. They can't even direct what they do with those revenues, as 14 of their banks are being sanctioned by the West for trading with Iranian banks to buy natural gas because they're sweltering in the summer. And they were sanctioned by them. And they have $90 billion sitting at the Federal Reserve from 2022 alone. And they said, could we have $1 billion, please? And the Fed said, no, you can't. So when you talk about the hypocrisy of the West, the way that these countries look at the United States, Iraq just said, fine, we are willing to join BRICS now if we are invited. They just made trading in dollars. If you own a company illegal, you go to prison and they'll take your business. As of January 1, 2024, all physical dollar bills, the green dollar bills, will be gone. No banks will have them any longer. They're pushing back against the West, a country that invades them illegally and then blows up their country, literally, topples their regime, and won't even let them invest the proceeds or do what they want with the proceeds of their natural resources or give them any of it when they ask for it. And so this is the rallying cry, if you will, that is coalescing all of these countries. You look at the way, and I'm not speaking about the war in the Ukraine, but Trump, Putin was in many respects defending his country. And you look at, is it any worse than what we did going into Iraq? And sorry, we're wrong, and staying there for 20 years, not leaving, occupying, taking all of their natural resource revenue, not letting them access it. I mean, come on. The rest of the world looks at us as being hypocritical. And if you try and look at this from a logical perspective, even being a patriot, being an American, I mean, how can you not say, geez, if the shoe was on the other foot, can you only imagine? And I think this is why you're seeing these countries join together and why these countries in and of themselves could not stand up to the West. Like you were saying earlier, they don't want it. But there's safety in numbers. And if they have to accelerate the speed at which they unite, they will. But I would argue they've been doing things in a very methodical fashion, putting together an infrastructure, energy and geographic infrastructure, along with the acquisition of hard assets like gold and copper and aluminum and whatever it may be. All of these countries are finding safety in numbers, and they're pushing back exactly against that type of hypocrisy. And I hate to say it, but it's hard to not understand that because, we supposedly liberated them 20 years ago. What the hell are we still doing there? And why are we holding their money? It's their money. If we liberated them, then get the hell out, let them take care of themselves and stand up on their own 2 feet. These are the things that I think are not being portrayed accurately enough in the Western media. And these are the reasons why these countries are doing what they're doing. And you see the trend of de-dollarization accelerating if you pay attention, not if you watch the mainstream, but if you pay attention, you see it. And that's exactly why. And it's not going to end, I don't think, with before we see an ultimate change in the system, an ultimate change in what is the petrodollar, because these countries really, aside from the fact of not wanting to be on the wrong side of the U.S. and their agenda, it's a country that's going green and has turned its back on Saudi Arabia. So this will not lead, I think, to a good place whatsoever, but ultimately to that moment where the dollar is no longer the single sole settlement currency for oil across the globe.
Yeah, I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate, because there's a lot of people out there who actually think that the BRICS countries, the global South, and all the other countries that have a lot of dollar reserves, that they all depend on the dollar, and that the demand for dollars is going to go through the roof. But they could just keep accumulating gold and natural resources and doing business with each other, and just say, you can keep your dollars. What's your reply?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of dollar debts. I
It's
agree with that. I agree with that, Mario. I do. There are a lot of debts that need to settle in dollars, but at what point does the rest of the world say we've had enough? I mean, we're inflating away our currency, no question about it. It's being inflated away, and you look at the bond market; it's going upside. The worst performing bond market over the last 3 years in the history of the bond market. At what point does the rest of the world say, we don't want your dollars any longer? And you're right, it has been the nicest shirt in the dirty laundry basket until it's not. And that's what I mean by people think that this has to happen immediately. The steps are being put into place, and I believe, at some point, why would you want to sell oil to a country that's going green, that's its currency is being inflated away ridiculously slow? So the metrics by which they measure inflation are lies. And when you look at where we are, we have $33 trillion debt, but $130 trillion in unfunded liabilities. How the hell do you ever pay for that? And what happens as rates go higher, and as the dollar, which is inordinately strong right now, unjustifiably strong, starts to lose ground, inflation only starts to go higher. This is a deal, like I said, little by little by little by little by little, and bang, all at once. And to the dollar bull's point, they're right. And that's what the little by little by little by little by little is. All of these deals, at some point, when you see all of these deals that are settling outside the dollar, it has to affect the reserve status of the dollar. And so until it happens, the dollar is still the king. But I will tell you that I believe that is a trend that is firmly in the sights of the BRICS nations and the majority of these countries around the world that are pushing back against the West, that ultimately this is where they want to go. Until then, the dollar is still king. But it is a situation that I think is moving in the wrong direction. So yes, they're right until they're not. And when they're not, it will be all at once. And it will be a religious experience for all those naysayers and those dollar bulls, or the people that have recency or normalcy bias. Look, for 50 years or longer, that's the way it's been. There hasn't been an alternative. But I think what these countries are doing is setting the stage for there to be a real alternative. And when you have the majority of human population rallying against this hegemony, this Western hypocrisy, yeah, there will come a point where they flip the switch. Until then, the dollar bulls win. But when they lose everything. And that's the thing that I think is really being ignored. Who knows when that will be? But I think the rest of the world has had it with the West, had it with our inflation, had it with our hypocrisy. I mean, look at the decisions that we are making and the people that are leading our country. You can even look at what's happening here at home with the lack of faith, where the justice system is being not equally administered between the previous administration and the current administration. You can look at the divisiveness or the lack of unity and harmony in this country, where everyone's at each other's throats. There's lawlessness. The banks are on edge. The commercial real estate is ready to blow up the whole system. I mean, there's so many things that you could point to that this country isn't what it once was. From a standpoint of what it once was, when our back was against the wall and go back through all of history, we were a united country. We weren't divided. We're very divided right now. We're also very broke. We're 130% debt to GDP. There has never been a country in history that's crossed that line that hasn't defaulted, whether it be through outright default or hyperinflation. And you look at the indebtedness, over $1 trillion in credit card debt, over 17 trillion in household debt, the largest amount of auto debt ever, and the delinquencies and repossessions going through the roof, the largest amount of student debt, which happens to be as nauseating as it could be, the largest asset in the United States at $1.6 trillion. At the same time, we have the lowest level of savings. We have 65% of the country living paycheck to paycheck, 45% of those people earning over $100,000 a year living paycheck to paycheck. We are not, I believe, in any regard, our status and the whole big picture doesn't justify being the world reserve status. It just doesn't. And I think the rest of the world understands it and sees that, and they are methodically plotting until that all at once moment happens. And your pushback, I understand. I mean, I get it, until it's wrong. And that wrong will happen, and it will happen all at once. And there's an old saying that says people can't get out of the way of what they don't see coming. And I think if you're not a contrarian right now, Mario, you end up getting run over. You will be a victim at some point. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week or next month or next year, but maybe again it is. And maybe the acceleration in what we see as a result of all of the craziness going on around the globe will only expedite that all at once moment. Until then, you have time to take advantage of your strong dollar and purchasing real assets. And that's exactly what the rest of the world is doing. They're using the strong dollar. They're using the manipulation of the markets against us, and they're draining the exchanges of all the commodities, and they're slowly plotting and building relationships that when that moment happens, it will be strong enough and enforced enough to sustain any challenge by the West, short of a all-out military war, a severe war, pushing back against it. But remember, these countries, you have 2 of the 3 largest nuclear arsenals with Russia and China. It's not going to be so easy when all of the world's energy and all of the world's population, the majority of it, and the largest military presence and a larger GDP presence. And geez, what do you know? They have enough countries. If 50 countries sign up to the BRICS, there's 27 that have applied and 22 that have expressed interest. You have 50 plus countries, and the majority of human population. Yeah, let's reevaluate that statement then. And until then, these countries are using the suppression of the Western markets, and all of that type of recency bias rhetoric to quietly put their pieces on the chessboard in place. So I like the pushback and I agree with it until it's no longer applicable. And that's the question. When does that moment happen? Don't know, but I think it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice there. Do what the BRICS countries are doing. They're like taking advantage of the relatively strong US dollar and exchanging it for real assets, for precious metals, for commodities. And I think we should do the same. I'm not saying they are perfect, but they see the writing on the wall, all the debt and the way it's going to go. So, Andy, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. We shouldn't leave it that long for our next interview.
I love coming on your show, Mario. You're one of the real solid people in this industry, and your research is second to none, and I think you're authentic, and it's an honor to be here. And anytime that I'm invited, I'm excited to come on, and I really do appreciate it this time.
Thank you, Andy, and I appreciate you coming on as well. I think you're a top guy in the industry as well. Take care.
You too. Stay well, Mario.
Thank you.